Hello guys, and welcome back to this episode. So today in this episode we are going to discuss the strangest, the weirdest phobias that I could possibly find. It hasn't been easy, it hasn't been also extremely complicated, to be honest with you. There are plenty that I could mention in this video, but I decided to keep it short, to give you the short version of whatever I found, right? And to shrink it down to 10. So today we are going to discuss the 10 most ridiculous, can I say that? No, maybe not. The most weirdest, bizarre phobias. Let's start. Place number 1. The so-called decidophobia. So basically this is the fear of making decision. I don't know if this is like a modern thing, but I came up with an idea. I came up with some sort of explanation for why we have this phobia today. And my understanding is that perhaps the freedom that we enjoy today is scary. And I'm saying perhaps because, for instance, it's very difficult to not be afraid, not be scared of making huge mistakes, right? So there's concepts like failure, right? Or failure and success that can provoke us into a state where we don't know what to decide. But there's also the idea that whatever choice you are going to make is going to determine, like, some choices nothing really, but some choices are a big deal, right? And even the ones that seem important but not so important, for instance, like picking one boyfriend or one girlfriend over another, right, might lead us into a path that we did not expect. We can have toxic relationships, or we might encounter somebody that starts to stalker us, and things of that nature. So definitely there is a huge risk in whatever decision we are making. Plus, on top of that, up until probably the last century, society was way more structured, hierarchical, and organized. And so in many countries you would marry via a combined marriage. Also, the community, the sense of community was so much important that there was a sense of responsibility to a personal level, and to a individual level, and to a societal community, more extended sort of level that today we don't necessarily get. And I feel that all of that, philosophically, historically, has an important root, because nowadays the decisions that we make are so fundamental to us. They determine who we are, and they constitute our identity, which is personal identity, but it's also social identity. That's it. Let me go to number 2. Nomophobia. Nomophobia is some sort of like FOMO, the fear of missing out. But nomophobia is fear of missing out specifically related to the addiction that more or less everybody suffers from. That is the addiction to social media and being in contact with the rest of the world, or just catching up, updating oneself on whatever happened, right? I feel that marketing here is playing a major role. That when you say like that you have not read Harry Potter, or that you have not seen the Titanic, right, or things like that, I feel that that is almost unacceptable. People will start not to understand who you are, where you come from, where have you been. And so it's interesting that we have developed this entirely new phobia that maintains that addiction that we all have, right? And that is why it's so important to, detox if you feel that you are too attached, then you check your accounts, your social accounts too much or too often. So that would be, you know, a very good practice to start detaching oneself from a world that is not necessarily that real, and, you know, just get more grounded in the reality we live. At the same time though, social media, I'll acknowledge that social media have the power of creating escapism, right? Of creating this way out of one's reality. And sometimes reality is scary, threatening, sad, lonely, you know, and so there are good reasons why we have access to tools that can detach ourselves from reality. However, there are more intelligent strategies that we can apply to just escape from our reality, right? Like things that would enrich ourselves, put us in contact with, you know, somebody else. That could be, you know, an outdoor sort of activity, or that could be learning a language. That could be so many different things that we could possibly be doing to overcome that sense of you know, being alone in our world when the reality we live in is not particularly pleasant, let's say. Number 3, philophobia. So this has an ancient Greek root, philos, that is love, and is exactly that, is the fear of being in love with somebody, being in a relationship with somebody. Mostly we fear falling in love because we prefer not to suffer, and so not to suffer trumps the willingness to you know, fall in love, the willingness and emotional availability to you know, being open to dating or to a relationship, and being, you know, vulnerable with somebody else. Also, that requires trust, and I have honestly been seeing a lot of videos where females would suggest to date multiple people, to not look desperate and things like that, right? And I mean, I'm gonna say that there is a point in doing that, but I'm also gonna say that everybody should respect their own nature. So I'm not here to give suggestion to anybody, but it's important also to date one person, for instance, also one person at a time. And it's also important to you know, being willing to being vulnerable and to being sincere and to, you know, take the steps that will lead to a relationship, right? And there's this concept that is like less familiar to me, but I'm sure it's way more familiar to many people out there. That is, you date multiple people because, you know, once one is out, then there's the next one, right? And I get it, but at the same time, I'm not sure I'm totally into that, for the reason that, you know, that would make us more sterile to affections, that would disperse our energy to multiple people. So I have honestly mixed feelings about the strategy of multiple dating. I don't think that that improves trust, and I think that once you're used to that system, then it's very hard to go back to a point or a place where you go like, okay, I'm sure that this person is not doing the same thing, right? Because once you start doing that, then you can also project onto other people what you are doing, right? And I'm not sure, you know, where trust is in all of that. But I mean, I'm for the theory, you know, do whatever makes you happy. So, you know, I'm just like not so much into that, let's say. And I can see why that would lead eventually to being scared, being afraid of having a relationship, of you know, a true relationship, of falling in love, of you know, entertain this monogamous rapport with one person. But anyway, let's move on. Number 4. Anuptophobia. This is exactly the opposite, right? It's the idea that we are afraid of sentimental freedom, right? That we cannot be on our own, that we need somebody or we want somebody, but we want it in a way that is not healthy to us, right? Because we're not ready to be by ourselves on our own, right? And do the things that make us happy. And I honestly spoke with somebody once that told me, and she has like a daughter, 11-year-old daughter, and she was telling me like, I'm gonna keep her busy until she's 18 because I don't want her to have boyfriends, right? And that's her parenting style. So I was like, oh, that's interesting, right? Because, you know, on the one hand, you could argue, theoretically though, that you would deprive that child of a bunch of experiences that are related to, you know, significant relationships. And then that child, when she's 18, she'll be like a woman, or anyway, like a grown adult, and she would not know how to handle certain things. On the other hand though, I acknowledge and I am convinced that that is also some sort of like very good strategy, because she would have and she will have the time to explore who she is on her own, right? And sometimes we don't even take the time to explore who we are, to explore what is it that we like, to do the things that we really enjoy, because we don't know ourselves enough, or we don't know ourselves that well as we thought we knew ourselves. So I don't know, I think that that is a point, and I think that, you know, there's like a cyclical way, right? You have a relationship and then you have a period where you don't date because you're not ready, and that's sure to lick the wounds, but that would also be a great opportunity for you to explore a bit who you are, what is it that you like, take up new hobbies, you know, still like mingling with people and whatnot, right? I'm not saying necessarily become a hermit, but that would be a great opportunity for each and every one of us. Alright, so let's go to number 5. Number 5 is the hypnophobia. The hypno or the hypnophobia, something along those lines. So that's interesting because, like, okay, this is sort of a social phobia, specifically directed towards dinners. So when you are at a dinner and you don't have, or you fear you don't have the skills, the gift of gab, the skills to conversate, to talk with other people, probably it's going to be small talk, you know, and just like socialize on a different level, for instance, right? If you have an important dinner, let's say. And I thought it was like interesting. I don't know though, right? Like, I mean, I know that there are many people that are that fear public speaking. They're petrified, they have social anxiety because of that, and so on and so forth. So, being aware of that, I was like, well, that's interesting, right? Because you could be talking about many different things, and a valid alternative to that would be awkward silence, right? And I mean, in the end, you can't possibly connect with everybody on earth. You just cannot, and there will simply be people you connect more with. So it's like, interesting. Is this really a phobia? I don't know, but probably it is. It's classified as one. But I don't know, I struggle. And I'm like ambivert. I'm not necessarily extrovert. And I prefer most definitely like encounters one-on-one rather than me being in a group. So I'm not like that necessarily that type of person. So I could see that I would feel also a little bit anxious, you know, being in a big dinner and you know, small talking to people and things like that. So I get it. I don't know if that would ever be perceived by me as a phobia though. So it would be interesting if anyone of you out there has this sort of radical phobia? Please explain. Comment below. Let me know and help me understand. Fear number 6. That is the so-called Red Scare. Now this is interesting. It is the fear that communists will come, will arrive, will eat the kids, will do all the terrible, horrible things that communists do, which I personally don't get it, also because of where I grew up, right? In the time probably I grew up. But I'm assuming that is, you know, a fear that was born with the propaganda, can I say with the American propaganda against the communist regime? So definitely, you know, something I never thought could turn into a phobia. But if you think about it, right, you know, there was a whole propaganda and a whole like bunch of statements that were made against the communist regime and what communists would do, you know, that I'm sure that developed in some people some phobia that you could actually like be and not live in communist regimes. So there you have it. Then fear number 7, actually phobia number 7 I should say. Then phobia number 7, that's interesting also, it's barophobia. And barophobia is nothing else but the unmotivated fear of gravity. And specifically, those people cannot go in an elevator, in a lift. And it's like interesting. Because, and you claustrophobia, right, when you can't stay in a place that is too small, right, and some people really get panicky about it, right, and now we have also barophobia, right, you can't go up in an elevator because you go like against the force of gravity that will push you downwards, right, and I must say, I don't have this phobia, I don't think I do at least, I might discover it while doing this video, things that I don't know about myself. But I don't think I have this phobia, but I have taken once an elevator to a very high floor. It was like, I can't remember honestly, 82 or something like that. And it was like scary. And it took a little too long. And I'm like not used to it at all. And I don't know how people in Singapore or people in Hong Kong can do this every single day. I would not necessarily like doing that. But I must admit, you know, it makes sense to me. It makes sense that you are in an elevator with people and you're going up, up, and up. And, you know, the waiting, I think the waiting increases your anxiety, something like that. It was like, you know, a weird feeling. I wouldn't describe that as, you know, particularly anxious as feeling, but it was kind of weird. So, totally get it. You guys out there have my full understanding. Well, my understanding to the best of my abilities. Let's move on. So, phobia number 8. Phobia number 8 is called euphobia. It's the fear of receiving good news. This one, if anybody out there can explain this to me, thank you. I honestly have no idea where this comes from. I honestly don't understand it. And it's not fear of bad news, it's like fear of good news. And I'm thinking it might have to do with the feeling that you don't deserve it. But that is like a conditioning that we might have acquired from our past. So it might be deeper, but it's interesting, right? Sometimes good things, great things happen to us and we go like, did this really happen? Like me? Like, do I deserve this, right? It's also a syndrome, like you have the imposter syndrome, where you're like, this is not me, I don't deserve this, I haven't done enough, or I haven't done that well to be in this position, right? And this is a feeling that we owe to fight every single time, right? Because we do deserve good things to happen to us, each and every one of us. So that's all I'm gonna say about that. Phobia number 9, siderodromophobia. This is a phobia that apparently Freud suffered from. Very interesting. The fear, the unmotivated, unnecessary, elevated sort of fear of taking trains. I don't think I have this one as well. I don't think I had any of those fears. But I remember once being in a period of time where I was particularly under stress and particularly anxious, and I remember that I had to take the train. I was like scared of being, you know, in an environment with people, taking the train. There was something off about that experience, right? And I remember that vividly, and I remember thinking, what is this? What is happening? Like, why am I feeling like this, right? But I've also lived a period of time where I was very isolated, you know, like in one room all the time. For instance, while I was studying, and I was very much into that. And so I did have the impression that, you know, that feeling that I had at the time was just connected to the period I was living into my previous condition, which was like pretty much being in a room studying 17 hours a day and night also. But I don't know if there's something more specific about trains, because for instance Freud had a different routine. He would see people, he would walk, so that's interesting. Perhaps there is something specifically connected to trains, or maybe specifically connected to means of transport that you know, motivates or sparks this sort of phobia. And finally, it was my favorite. Also, the name of it is impossible to pronounce, so I'm going to do my very best. Phobia number 10 is called consicotaliophobia. I don't know if I've pronounced that correctly. It's the fear of chopstick. Now, luckily we have forks, so it's not a big deal. But I don't know why we're talking about phobia. Is this like fear, and specifically fear of what? Of using them, of choking with them, of not being able to use them in public? I am honestly not sure. So if anyone out there is more informed, please go ahead and educate me. But this is all I found. That was fear of chopsticks, which made me drop my jaw. But interesting. I've seen a bunch of phobias researching for this video. I've seen a bunch, like of fish, of meat, of like also with impossible names. I don't know who gave those names to those phobia, but many of them had an impossible name, honestly. But anyway, with that being said, guys, please let me know. Let me know your thoughts, comment below. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel, like the video, comment below, hit the notification bell to receive our updates. We'll talk some more next time. Bye!